You are not best mommy, not even close. Not you, not you, and not you either. Best mommy belongs to this demented old man here. No, and I'm not kidding. Don't click away. I have a legit and canon explanation for this. We don't need an explanation for the Geo Archon Rex Lapis, right?
Even better.
You have heard of Zhongli being referred to as best Genshin daddy once or twice, but have I ever told you that
Zhongli
could be the secret waifu of Liyue?
But dude, you're too stupid to say that. What gave you the idea?
Shut up. Let me humor you for a second. Zhongli is an anomaly. He's the oldest Archon in the game, but there's so much that we don't know about him. Why does he have cubes in his statue? Why does he have no twin? Where does he come from? His melting brain of lobotomized dragon is so suspicious. He definitely knows so much about the Cataclysm, the creation of Tevat, and the Tsaritsa's plans. But this guy is so stubborn he isn't telling us anything!
Why?
But what I'm interested in is, Rex Lapis seems to imply that he has a secret form. And what secret form is that, you may ask? Well, I don't know, but I can prove to you that his secret form could be a mothering mother. And I did! I have proved the true identity of Zhongli. And after research, I have learned that Zhongli is a certified mother. And that's how I spoiled Genshin Impact's plot. His identity spoiled Genshin Impact's plot? How could that be possible? If you want to know, stick around and find out, my fellow orphans.
Damage to the front end of your car, which hit his car in the rear.
I know, my claims are crazy, but where did I even get that from? Now, my fellow orphans, did you actually know that there's references around this game where Rex Lapis actually appeared like a woman? Well, believe it or not, the idea of Rex Lapis appearing as a woman sometimes has already been theorized for a long time, but most people really put down the theory for many reasons I'll mention later. Let's keep the record straight. What do we mean by Zhongli being a woman? Well, I'm not instigating that Zhongli was Liyue's secret mommy waifu or something. No, not specifically. I'm just theorizing that Zhongli at least took one female form at one point, which is some people can't really seem to agree if that's the case. His true gender, once again, what I feel like this is deja vu, is not the goal of this video. Well, because if you ask me, I think gods like him are beyond the human concept of gender. My only main goal is that if he had taken the human female form at least to one, or for the very least, he can potentially do so. And if so, can I prove what she looks like?
Oh shoot.
Is he gone? What if I told you that I could? Let's get to the evidences now, shall we? Now, if you've played Genshin Impact for a long time, you definitely would have done the Liyue Archon quest. If not, what the heck are you even doing here? During the preparation of his extravagant funeral, one of the things Zhongli tells you to do is to give Rex Lapis' statues 3 perfume. Specifically, Golden House Million, Valley Weaver, and Fate's Yearning. The third one's very important and the one we're interested in because this is the one that Statue of 7 resonated with. This perfume? Specifically, the first time I saw this quest, I thought he just liked to perfume the older ladies because he likes them ladies close to the retirement home so he doesn't have to walk far. But Paimon specifically says,
Does this mean that Rex Lapis is actually an older woman?
okay, maybe they wanted to draw away from the possibility that Zhongli likes them aged artifacts, but Paimon could have specifically said,
Wow, he sure loves his flowers. I wonder what significance does it have back then?
or,
Wow, I wonder if he had a past lover with that fragrance.
or,
Wow, yup.
but no! Instead, we get this. The crazy thing is that Mr. Museum Attraction even entertains this, knowing Zhongli in his third, actually getup. If he actually didn't take the human form, he would have corrected them on the go. Okay, whatever. He just probably liked the smell of the perfume. I mean, guys can do that. I mean, even if the game seems to specifically draw the fact that Zhongli took a female form not just once but another time in an event, but whatever. Let's be skeptical anyway. But let's just say that Zhongli just loves this perfume. Nothing else, right? Nothing else. If no one decided to write a book talk about him liking this perfume! Interestingly, the people of Liyue see the pretty and sweet-smelling silk flower as one of the many symbols of Rex Lapis. Which begs the question, has the mighty and imposing god, who typically takes on the decidedly masculine form on his excursions to the mortal realm, has ever taken the form of a woman and accepted the ritual offering of the form of a bunch of flowers? The sparse historical records on one hand and the plethora of rumors of obscure origin of the other means that while this claim is more or less impossible to verify, it cannot be simply discussed as a baseless speculation. This quote is a direct quote from the book Custom of Liyue Silk Flowers, a book study written by Fadlan, a Sumeru scholar. Like, okay, maybe we can just say he likes the perfume. Let the man like what he wants to like without assuming anything else. But why would Hoyo go all their way to point this out again? Could it be that the game is telling us something? Once again, the scholar could have just said that this could have been his favorite flower from a distant past, or it might have reminded him of something. So why point it out again? Okay, hang on. Let's just grab some popcorn and perfume as foods and drinks, because this will be hard to explain. Zhongli is a shapeshifter. This means he can change his forms pretty quickly whenever he likes, however he likes. This is why we're having the discussion in the first place. This is so well known, in fact, that the people of Liyue would write embellished stories about it. Let me bring you to the book Rex Incognito, a book about Rex Lapis, a book about Rex's Lapis Incognito trip to Liyue. To recap, it's just basically a Family Guy episode about Rex Lapis going to an antique house and calls one of the plaques a fake.
Do I have time? You know what? I'm gonna go for it. Son of a bitch! Looks like I'm gonna have to pile dinner on top of that. Hey! It's Rex Lapis!
Other than the fact, Rex Incognito shows at least 3 stories where Rex Lapis went down and shapeshifted into a man with a long black robe, a woman with long black gown, and a young man with a generic fisherman garb. Despite of the many forms he took, one common thing is that they all have amber and golden eyes. And since Zhongli has amber eyes, this leads people to believe that this is a fact. I can't be 100% that this is true, but I like to think that he does. Hold this thought, because this will be very important later. Some people might say, did Zhongli debunk his claim? He clearly said this in the 2.4 Lantern Rite event that even the books are inaccurate and he didn't really shapeshift like he did in the books. Wait, back up a bit. My gears grind every time I hear this claim. To add context to this was during the time when you bumped into Zhongli in the 3rd day of the event wherein he was reading books. At this point, he asked the traveler what book stood out to him in Liyue, or her if you're playing Lumine.
Oh my god!
The first choice was Rex Incognito, in which you get the dialogue right here. Many people dismiss this as him saying, "Oh, what utterless bullocks, my dear traveler! This book is a little too delulu on their ideas. But I'm built different. I do in fact journey down the mortal realm, but there would not be so much ostentatious shapeshifting as them educated books would lead you to believe." Which just means to people, nah, I don't look like mother material. However, if you continue reading the context, he would expand and say that shapeshifting is done so that no one would tell him apart from the public, just like an NPC. No. This was more him saying, nah, I would have them tatas, bro. Just not like that, bro. Doesn't sound like me. By the way, this is the 3rd time Genshin referred to him being in a female form. But this one's a little more indirect than the last 2. But hold your jades close to your legs, Timmies and Tanks, because there is one more time where, once again, someone refers to Zhongli being a woman. The Stone Harbor Treasure Journal is an exclusive web event back then in 1.1 where you go around Liyue with Zhongli and Child and do quests and stuff. As what you do exactly here, don't look at me, I wasn't playing Genshin this time. But what we're interested in here is the dialogue. When you claim up to 24k credits in the game, you get this dialogue, where the traveler themselves can't help but think Zhongli might have taken form of a woman. Rex Lapis here, again, never confirms or denies it, but even entertained the possibility. Maybe it's true that in all 4 instances, yes, not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 instances of them mentioning this that he did not divine this fact. But we know Zhongli is the type to nerd out if something is wrong.
No, I am not debating right or wrong. I am simply stating a fact.
Enough! Do you think you understand the Lord of Geo more than me?
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the f***
Granted, he did bring this up in an actual historian discourse compared to at least the 2 instances of Zhongli bringing out his opinion on a literary work of art, but so much instances of mentioning he was a girl, it feels like it's foreshadowing. So 4 times, people have mentioned Zhongli having a female form, whether this favorite brand of perfume, having the feminine silk flower as a symbol, many tales and books featuring with a female form, Rex Lapis being told this not once, not twice, and not even refuting it. It just seems like the story is begging us to believe that he has a female form. But what if I tell you that we can tell what his female form looks like? What if his female form is his original form? Despite Zhongli living for so long, we know so little about his origins. The most that we know about him is that he descended 6,000 years ago. I tried researching many things that I could get my hands on. Books, tablets, anything about Liyue. I skimmed through anything that mentions Rex Lapis. Heck, the current new region about Chenyu Vale, as far as I know, has nothing to do with Zhongli. As a speculating theorist on YouTube, I am relatively new. I joined in 2.8 and as only making theories since 4.0, so I'm not really well versed in Genshin Impact's deepest lore. So as far as I know, I tried scraping every single Zhongli lore I could get my hands with. There is so little information about his origins. All we know that in 6k years ago, he went down and decided to put up the mountain Xianyun. After that, he just went silent until meeting with his Adepti friends hundreds of years later, on the Archon War. I feel like I scraped the barrel on so much, I feel like I know everything about it. Like, for example, Zhongli is only one of the Archons who had his cube instead of an orb. Zhongli seems to be the only one with a twin Archon, or in this case, a twin parallel character like every other Archon did. Zhongli seems to have death flags, like the first impression is him dying, he's part of funeral parlor, he is eroding, and he asks the traveler to fill his role to pass the history. Not to mention retiring is always something for old men. Geo is considered to be the first and strongest element according to one book, from the verses of Equilibrium. Zhongli seems to be the only Archon whose origins isn't even mentioned. Venti was a wind spirit, A and Macaulay seems to be elemental beings, Nahida is a VTuber, Irminsul avatar, and Verena came from Fossilors. For our land with rocks recording everything about history, we just seem to know nothing about him. So I began looking at the story quests, but you know, something just doesn't seem to feel right in Zhongli's story quest. What do I mean by this? If you look at the story quests, they, or should at least, incorporate the character's backstory or drag us around like we're doing their jobs. I swear, I was struggling to understand the lingo in Yelan's story quest. Please, I am not a politician. What's even more surprising is the pattern that we see in the Archon story quest. Story quest 1 seems to be how an Archon acts and feels, and story quest 2 seems to be a lore drop for them. Or probably in this case a really huge lore drop anyway. While we can't entirely prove the pattern of story quest is true because of the lack of Venti's and Verena's story quest at this time, the first story seems clear that at least it shows what the Archon does and sometimes their internal conflict of their character, or at least they let their character shine. Do you see the weird thing about this though? If you look at Zhongli's first quest, we do get the pattern of what he does as an Archon and his personality throughout the quest. If you compare everyone's second story quest, you'd notice that Zhongli's quest just feels a little odd. Venti and Verena doesn't have the second story quest yet, so we can just put them away for now. For the other second story quests, they have a theme of dropping a huge lore drop.
I will have order!
Yes, we did get a weekly boss in the form of Rock Frog, but isn't it weird that this questline didn't give us a huge lore bomb? I mean, yeah, this is Zhongli that we're talking about. He wouldn't say anything because of his contracts, and this quest was released during a time when Genshin's writing is as fresh as a fetus. But wouldn't you at least think that the Geo Frog would at least mention something what would help us speculate about Liyue? It just seems off about me. I can't take bad writing or overlook this as an answer. Something just feels odd. Like, okay, fine, maybe there was some lore bomb. Zhongli trapped this guy and we did learn about erosion, but comparing to learning something about Estroth and their connections with the twin Archons, Makoto's effect on Inazuma with planting this tree, their usurpers and the sovereigns, it just doesn't seem satisfying and huge. I mean, Mr. Retard's toothless entire gig here is, oh, I don't know, not tell us anything, and then in the end we don't even force him. But I feel like the lack of lore bombs is because his knowledge would have ended up spoiling the game. But my friends, orphans and tanks, what if I told you that his story quest did spoil something? To recap, in the second story quest, Traveler and Paimon was looking for a commission, which led them to this guy looking for workers for the chasm. Apparently, half of the group disappeared into smoke, never to be seen again, and with the help of Zhongli, a guy named Kunjun, they find out that the child had led the workers away. They eventually find one of the workers in their camps, which eventually leads them to a tunnel that leads them to Azhdaha, where they realize the child, which was Azhdaha, manipulated the miners to mine a tunnel that leads to the seal. The little girl backshots them from behind and she misses, making the seal take the hit and dragging him into Azhdaha's domain. Pow pow! We defeated him. Then Kungjun, the guy from earlier, shows up and says that he is also Azhdaha. But the good side. Kungjun goes grandpa mode and tells us the entire real story. Here that we learn that Azhdaha apparently betrayed Zhongli, but he's just as delulu as Zhongli because erosion got into his brain, like a dementia patient. But unlike Zhongli, because the miners kept mining away from the ley lines, which hurts those of Azhdaha, then here, Azhdaha splits into two. The malevolent, angry side, which is still Azhdaha, but the kid, and Kungjun, the benevolent side of him, which sides with Zhongli. So the two men chatted on the fireplace until he disappears. And while the story did talk about erosion, what if I told you they also told Zhongli's origins throughout the entire story quest? Now hold a pin to that thought because we're gonna go pick up there later. What exactly is he? Some people says he's the Geo sovereign, some people say that he's the shade of the Primordial One, a descender, or normal old man.
I will have all.
But what exactly is he? If you ask me, I think he's a fossil, but that's not a satisfying answer. The problem of asking his identity is that the more time updates come, the more categories Zhongli just keeps fitting into. However, I watched a video from Ashkai that you might have watched. Her videos are interesting watch, and it would be a disrespect for me to say everything that she said, so I recommend that you watch it for yourself. What I wanted to take away from her video is that she concluded that Zhongli is probably a god king, which is some sort of golden god like Deshret and Remus because of their relationships with gold and stars. Zhongli, according to Ashkai, speculates that Zhongli might have not been a dragon like in a classical sense like we know, but more of a behemoth, a strong earth monster of the Bible, and an earthly counterpart of Leviathan, a counterpart of Nuvlet. Yes, this is probably why they're similar, and this is probably why he's not a sovereign. And if Zhongli is a behemoth because of his depiction of Morax, there is a god in Egypt called Apis, a god bull of fertility depicted with a sun disk and served as an intermediary between humans and other powerful deities. Also, this Apis is known to hold extravagant funeral services. The issue with this connection, according to Ashkai, is that Apis is also related to Osiris and Amun, and these gods reference to Amun are also known as the Scarred King, a god king. Ashkai goes deeper into the similarities, but I want you to take away from this is that with all the similarities, she concluded Zhongli was a god king, a solar god like Deshret, Remus, and Decarabian, who also has some relationships with suns and sun chariots. And surprise surprise, there is a sun chariot that fell in Liyue. But I don't think that's Zhongli, because he witnessed that same chariot fall, but I digress. Also, funny thing, I love the story of the sun chariot that fell down in the chasm. The story is that before all that, there's a traveler from afar that fell in love with a Seelie. They basically had a marriage in the lunar city where the three moon sisters are. If you guys don't know who they are, basically the story came from way before the Archon War. Anyways, after the traveler from the far and the Seelie got married, the chariot crashed down, and for some reason that made all the moon sisters kill off each other. Such a funny story. It's so random. What, did I mention it? I don't know. One thing I feel like that drives this point across is that for every sun god, they have a moon goddess or moon god that seems to go along with. Zhongli and Guizhong, Deshret and the goddess of flowers, the Primordial One and the second descender, the traveler in afar and the palace Seelie, and Remus and Sertologi. Okay, what? Where am I going this and what are those names? If you aren't a lore nerd, almost all these names would have whooshed over your thick forehead because it certainly did for me, but for now, just remember these names and their parallelism to the sun and moon, especially for the Primordial One and the second descender. Let's hold a pin again to this subject, because I'll get back to this. But all these names that I mentioned so far are god kings, or at least sun god. They certainly aren't the same because some of them are definitely not the same being. But just to know, when I mean god kings, I'm referring to the ones explicitly called god king, Deshret and Remus. And I'm including Zhongli and Decarabian here for now because Ashkai mentioned and theorized this, and I kinda believe this for a fact. So, we have 4 god kings. 4 kings. 4 descenders? 4 eras? Wait, hold on guys, are you seeing a connection here? If we go to the tower Ipsissimus, we see the notes here lying on the ground that reads the following. This note was obviously left by the Narcissenkreuz Ordo, a group which Rien, or Narcissenkreuz, was found to also been studying alchemy and ways to become a descender himself. Keep in mind that he was researching this way before the Traveler came as the 4th Descender, so he was sure to be the 4th Descender to be able to get the will enough to protect, sustain, and destroy and create the world. Mostly because Fountain was gonna get flooded and he needed a way to stop this, so he thought he was the way. But then again, I digress. Back to the note at hand. He says there are at least 4 eras: Hyperborea, Natlantian, Remuria, and Karan Arya. If you don't know what these eras are, these are basically the 4 samsaras Teyvat has gone through that Narcissenkreuz discovered. And just like the writer said, the world goes through a loop. People speculate that this means that Teyvat was restarting like a game until we are in the last era, and there will be no reset anymore. But since we have the history of Remuria, where at the current Aryan time, because this blob literally said that we're still living on it, I believe that these eras are just time periods instead, dictated by a rise when you descended to the era, and ended with a catastrophe to signal the end of the era. The descender relating to the era is just a popular theory upheld in the community, but since there are countless 4 symbolisms in the game, 4 descenders, 4 crown artifacts, 4 eras, 4 god kings, I could argue that this is correct. And since you can argue that each era can be assigned to an era of their rise and strongest impact, wouldn't it be fitting that the God King can be set in a reign in their golden era of their era? So with this in mind, I tried arranging them first. So this is the first thing I got. But something didn't really click. I would argue that I would probably put this Card King in the 4th era, but Zhongli is still alive today, so what gives? Maybe Zhongli's era is at the 1st, but the Caribbeans fit in the 1st era because both of them are related to the North Wind. But then I realized, doesn't Atlantean sound like Natland? And lo and behold, look what nation we are going to explore next. Maybe in Natland, we might discover a new sun god as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the dragon sovereign we're gonna meet there is coincidentally a sun god, since the dragon in Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl, is a dragon which has relations to the wind, arts, and the sun, similar to Remus, Deshret, the Caribbean, and Zhongli. But then I realized that we actually have 5 god kings, because I can't count for the love of me. But then I wondered, perhaps we did have 5 eras, because before Hyperborea and the actual race cycle Hoyo based it on was another race. And since before Sun and Moon is a hidden history, perhaps the first era was an era that even Narcissenkreuz didn't know. But then again, if we put this in mind, then we will have 5 eras. 5 eras? If that's the case, doesn't this sound like the Aztec tale of the 5 suns? But then I realized, what if Ashikai is wrong?
Yo bro, what you mean by that? What do you mean Ashikai is wrong?
You are getting too cocky.
Nah man, let him cook. Ashikai is never wrong.
Why are you Freminet?
Yo, you just reaching 10k subs and now you're calling people.
Okay, shut up. People can be wrong. I was wrong my first theory with this girl being a Fatus. People can be too. It isn't personal. What if Hyperborea's sun god wasn't the Caribbean? After all, Ashikai just related him to be a sun because of his architecture and old Mondstadt in the cutscenes, and even she was uncertain about this. But what if I told you who the first god king is? And that god king is Apollo. No, wait, who the heck is this guy in Isator? If we look in the Hyperborea, we can see that they were a mythical people who lived in the far northern part of the known world. Their people appears to derive from the Greek word meaning beyond Boreas, the god of the north wind. The thing I want you to see here is that the location of Hyperborea range differently, from Beltane, Scandinavia, Siberia, or even modern Russia or the Volga region, which is directly north of Withanian mountains. I have no idea if that's the entire pronunciation, but whatever. Okay, Jude, why are we here? Why are we just talking about why Zhongli's a girl? Why are we going to geography class? Just stay here for a bit, it'll make sense. The reason why I bring this up because of the phenomenal occurrence that happens in this area called the Midnight Sun. The Midnight Sun is an occurrence where the sun on that region really doesn't go back down and call it a day. It watches you while you sleep. Like a damn Santa Claus. You freaking pervert! Why is this important? Because the Greeks used to believe that the phenomena occurred because Apollo used that place as a resort and chills there in the winter. Hence why the sun watches you when you sleep. This god Apollos is the god of the sun, wind, and loves art and music. You know what gods in Genshin has been relating to this if you've been paying attention?
Yes!
This is our first sun god and not Dick Arabian. And you know where the location of Hyperborea is? One of them is in modern Russia. And you know what the equivalent of Russia is in Genshin? Snezhnaya. Now, if you look with that knowledge, look at the eras. It looks like all our nations as we've been traveling slowly to travel from Sumeru all the way to Snezhnaya, growing deeper into history until we finally unravel the truth of the world. With this case in mind, we might have this diagram instead. Yes, I called the Hyperborea king a Tsar, which is fitting for Snezhnaya. But something here doesn't fit here, which is Zhongli. Because the more I think about it, Zhongli never fit the first era Teyvat hid because, well, Zhongli never really reigned in the first era, and was just beginning to reign during the Archon War, which is in current Arya, which is Desert's era. So then is this a fad? Is my theory wrong? Did I just make and hope this theory fit to make a narrative? Am I a failure? A joke of a theorist? Did I clickbait you to know of Zhongli's current identity? Wait. What if Zhongli did reign in the first missing era? Let me explain. The reason why I can't put Zhongli or anyone else in the first hidden era, because in the same notes in the Ipsissimus Tower, it quotes, undergoes the loss of the paradise, the defeat of the evil dragons, the original sin and baptism, and finally freedom from the gods, which coincidentally fits each era of the Primordial One coming to the Vat, defeating the sovereigns, judging Fontaine in their oceanid humans Ying'er tried to make, and current Arya trying to be a godless nation. But have I mentioned that the Primordial One is also a god king? Well, sorta. Do you remember the names that I mentioned and their moon variants? I mentioned the Primordial One in the second Descender. The Primordial One has the same sun motifs, and remember before Sun and Moon, the scribe says that the Primordial One may have been Phanes, and Phanes is often a god depicted as an androgynous god of light, husband of Nyx, the goddess of darkness. We don't know if Phanes is indeed the Primordial One or an extra shade of the Primordial One, but for simplicity's sake, let's just say for now that they are. This with a motif of the moon goddesses makes me think that Primordial One is a sun god as well. You know who else is a sun god? You. No, not you. You. The Traveler is often speculated as a star who lived hundreds of thousands of years, and I'll not expand on this more because the video has gotten so long, but the Traveler is a star. And since suns is the forms of stars, what if sun gods or god kings we know now are stars? The Primordial One is certainly a star, and with Zhongli's TCG card relating to a star, it's just a no-brainer at this point. Which is why the third Descender has the ability to control elements in the form of the Gnosis, and the Traveler can wield elements without a vision, and how the Primordial One is definitely the god of light, or the master of all elements. Desert also known as the master of all elements too. Yeah, you get it. Okay, so the Primordial One is a star. Big deal. You just wasted my time. I'm clicking off. No! Here is the juicy bit. Remember all the pins I told you to pin ages ago? Now we're all gonna bring it back. Now, with all this information in mind, what if I tell you that Zhongli is not a shade, not a sovereign, but the Primordial One? Remember about the second story quest of Zhongli I mentioned ages ago before you were unmarried without 7 kids waiting at this point? Remember how I told you that this story quest might be a hidden lore drop in disguise? What if I told you that Zhongli did have a similar backstory with Azhdaha? Genshin, especially with story quests, are notorious with parallelism. If the story quest isn't about a character, they sometimes have a character that is the fall of their character. So what if Azhdaha is the fall of Zhongli? What do I mean by this? What if Zhongli split from the Primordial One? Look at the similarities. Azhdaha split into two people. Kungjung the Benevolent, Liu the Malevolent. You know who else in Genshin splits into other shades of beings? The Primordial One. The Primordial One split into 4 shades. Am I saying that Zhongli then again is one of the shades? No, I don't think so. He could be, or he could not be. But what I'm trying to prove here is that Zhongli did come from the Primordial One, but not necessarily one of the shades split from the beginning. So then why am I convinced that he did come from the Primordial One? Remember that Zhongli can shapeshift? And how Zhongli can shapeshift but his eyes stay the same color? And how Zhongli could have been a woman? Do you know any other celestial being who has a similar eye color? Yes! What if the sustainer of heavenly principles and Zhongli are the parallel of Kungjun and Jiu? Zhongli could have been the Primordial One's benevolence for Teyvat, while Asmodee could have been the corrupted and malevolent side of the Primordial One, a husk left to sustain his principles as the heavenly principles. Just like Azhdaha decayed with erosion, what if the Primordial One split into Zhongli and Asmodee after the battle with the third Descender? What if he was too weak to continue, he fell into a slumber, and he split into Zhongli and Asmodee, where Asmodee pushes the evil side of the Primordial One through some kind of weakness or corruption he faced, which was reflected by Asmodee's corrupted parts, and Zhongli is the only part of the Primordial One who wants to go against corruption and the second Descender, just like Kungjun with Azhdaha and in his plans. But then, along the way, just like after the war, like Kungjun suddenly waking up randomly in the middle of nowhere, Zhongli just descended down in a similar manner after the Primordial One's weakness.
Celestia. I have not been back in a long time.
Zhongli and Kungjun share similarities, from being rock lovers to being super knowledgeable and really old. And you know how suspiciously Geo is a small little child, and you know who else resembles like a small little child? Still not convinced? Let's keep going. Asmodee, or Asmodeus, is the king of demons in the legends of Solomon and constructing Solomon's temple. His seal is specifically made out of gold, which doesn't mean much, if not for the fact that Asmodee has golden eyes, and we've been specifically talking about gold and suns for so much, it just feels like something. Also, the weird fact that Zhongli and Asmodee has the ability to control cubes and stuff, that's super weird. And surprise, surprise, for Honkai players, you'd recognize Asmodee as the Herrscher of the Void, or heck, just Kiana. Either way, before we continue, let's answer the really important question. Have you ever thought what a Primordial One would look like? No? Well, I'm gonna answer it anyway. What if I told you that the Primordial One is KK? Or Kevin Kaslana? To the people who never played the Honkai series, let me briefly explain who the heck Kevin is. It doesn't really help that I've never played Honkai and I'm just name-dropping Kiana earlier, so all this would make sense eventually, but forgive me if I missed out anything, so correct me in the comments. Anyway, Kevin Kaslana in Honkai Impact 3rd is the main ancestor of the Kaslana family, the same family of the protagonist in the Honkai series, Kiana Kaslana, and in the previous era, Kevin was considered to be one of the strongest heroes of humanity. But in the current era, the era where the game takes place, he's one of the villains of the story, where one of the plans is literally zapping the entire human race with Honkai energy in hopes of giving a stigma, some kind of mutation that gives them benefits or something, I don't know. Oh yeah, forgot to mention that the chances of this type of mutation is like 1 out of 5,000, so if you don't like get a stigma, you die. Okay, why do I mention this? First of all, Kevin in the earliest games and stories of Honkai, GGZ, he was literally an altered version of Kiana Kaslana in a different universe, so that's why I had to mention that earlier that Asmodee resembled Kiana. And second of all, I saw a Reddit post from this guy explaining the similarities of Kevin Kaslana and the Primordial One, and I agree to an extent. He makes a good point on how the gemstones resemble their archons, and how the light gemstones are essentially Kevin Kaslana having the same code with KK, with the Travelers and the Stones, and how the Primordial One being the god of light is suspicious. He goes about a bigger detail about this, so I won't mention more. But with the description of Primordial One before Sun and Moon and in KK, it just fits so well. Androgynous, wings, and a crown. Suspicious that Paimon also has his themes, but what I'm getting at here is the Primordial One is literally screaming, "He's Kevin Kaslana." But is he Kevin Kaslana for real? No, I just think he's like an XP, like A is an XP from Mage. Also, side note, I never played Honkai, but it's kind of interesting that Kevin's last romantic interest is Professor May, which looks eerily similar to Raiden May of the second cycle of the timeline, and you know how A likes flexing that her ideal is closest to the heavenly principles?
Only through eternity are you closest to the heavenly principles.
Coincidence? I think not. I think it's probably something Hoyoverse didn't intend to do, but I think it's low-key A shipping herself with the Primordial One, I swear. In any case, with Kevin being the Primordial One and Kevin being the male version of Kiana into older Honkai games, it makes me think that it's more than a probability that the Primordial One split into Kiana and Kevin. Or Zhongli. I wouldn't be surprised if Zhongli's true form was a white-haired Zhongli. Hey, what if Zhongli's XP is also Kevin? If you're not convinced that Zhongli and Asmodee is the same person until they separated, here's one that will completely convince you. I was watching Dainslief one day and I came upon this short where you actually go underneath Celestia.
Area is right underneath Celestia. When you go to this area, right away you'll see an investigate prompt which summons 7 Anemo slimes. 7 to represent the 7 Archons.
And the symbolism here is crazy. Let me let her say it herself.
But the most mysterious thing in this area is this random goat. I'm not joking.
Did you catch that? This goat is supposed to represent Asmodee, but I feel like there's more to that than just that. If you look at the original Asmodee in the Arx Goetia, they had 3 heads. A bull, a man, and a goat. The goat is Asmodee, but you know that the bull might mean something else? If you search up for bull in the Arx Goetia, you might find that the Morax is a demon bull with the face of a man. If you think that doesn't explain anything, take a look at the man head. Also in the Arx Goetia, it says that the man head is a man who breathes flame. Doesn't that sound like a dragon? If you think that the heads have no relation to the character lore, take a look at another Archon based on a demon. Baal, or Baal, is a demon described with 3 heads, a cat, a man, and a toad. The Raiden Shogun also appeared up to 3 times as Raiden Makoto, Raiden A, and Raiden Shogun respectively. Most details of the Archon's demon counterparts doesn't often translate in the game in their character backgrounds, but the similarities are so close, we should take them into consideration. Could it be possible that the 3 heads of Asmodee mean the Primordial One, Asmodee, and Morax? I'm your leafy lore streamer. No, that doesn't. That means, in no shadow of a doubt, since the Primordial One is Kevin who split into Zhongli and Asmodee, Zhongli's waifu form could have been a Kiana Kaslana in a Ningguang outfit. I think. Yeah, that seems about right.
Never.
And they came to be the same being, so they're technically the same person, just like how Liu and Kungjun is the same person, but not really. Does that mean that every shade of Phanes is all Kiana? Me personally, I don't think so, because that kinda sucks at a catch-up standpoint. But this explains why Zhongli's orb is a Q in the statue and his weird son and primordial relation. Perhaps that's why Zhongli didn't have a twin like the other Archons, because the twin is technically the Primordial One and Asmodee. Does this solve that Zhongli is one of the shades? I'm not so sure, but the similarities are so striking I feel like it shouldn't be ignored. Although for me personally, I believe that the shades in Zhongli are completely different shades, and I believe that Zhongli and Asmodee split after the battle with the third descender, being a literal split of the Primordial One instead of one of the shades. So yeah, going back to the chart, the first God King hidden is the Primordial One, or technically Zhongli, which coincidentally means we have 5 cycles, and wow, does it fit the 5 Sun Aztec myths so well. Huh. That's weird. I mentioned that each sun god had their own moon goddess or goddesses that tempt them in some way or another. The Primordial One is also the second descender, Remus in the Blood Moon, Deshret and Nabun the Malekata and so forth. What if the first God King's moon goddess is a Tsaritsa? Okay, hear me out! I just called the first God King the Tsar because kings in Russia tends to be Caesar or Tsar. But what if the Tsar and the Tsaritsa have a relation? The Tsar and Tsaritsa probably loved each other, almost like every sun and moon relationship we've seen at this point, and because the Tsaritsa is a god of love, or at least we've theorized them to be, it's most likely that we do have a secret shipping here. For some reason, since we don't see him anymore, and more likely because the Tsaritsa is the main leader right now, the Tsar died, and now the loveless current Tsaritsa wants to make a new sun god using the third descender's body parts because the third descender is a descender, similar to the Primordial One in the Shades having the same properties as a sun, or a sun god. Now, I'm not saying that the current Tsaritsa is romantically involved with the first sun god. That's weird. It's like shipping Nahida with Zhongli. But then again, we don't even know how old the Tsaritsa is right now, so maybe I'm judging a little too fast. All I'm suggesting that the Tsaritsa knew about the Tsar and his son capabilities, and since because every descender had the same properties as a God King, she took this as an inspiration to create her new world with this newly built, probable 5th descender. We don't know anything about the first Tsar, but we know he has at least the capability of being a descender. But what if I told you that the first Tsar is a descender? And what if I told you that we did meet the Tsar? Remember when I told you that Apollo is the sun god of Cisnaya and how he abides in Hyperborea because of the midnight sun? The midnight sun shines brightly even at night. Do you know what kind of natural phenomena the sun has that's related to the midnight sun? The twilight. Well, kinda. Let me explain. You know, maybe you don't, the twilight is between the day and night, where the sun is actually gone from the sky, but the light is still shining in the sky. The midnight sun and the twilight isn't entirely the same, but they both shine in the middle of the night, so they are sort of the same in essence. The only difference between them is that the presence of the sun is no longer in the sky. And you know, with their similarities, do you know anyone else in Genshin Impact who is related to the Twilight? Yes, the Twilight Sword. Dainslief. What if Dainslief is Naznaya's Tsar? Or for the very least, he used to be the Tsar. My name for now has a theory about Dainslief's element, and if you were to translate his element and de-encrypt it,
the two S's, how about we highlight those as well? Which now gives us, that's right, the King of Serpents, Shesha, Vishnu's Adishesha, Narayana, a will powerful enough to create, protect, sustain, and destroy the world. The Twilight Sword of Khaenri'ah is the third Descender.
And the Traveler from Afar seems to be based on the Gnostic chorus hymn, and it doesn't help that this element was theorized and concluded to be light again, like every other Sangha we have learned to have wielded so far.
Of course, if you want a proper explanation on how the conclusion of Dainslief's element makes sense, you just want to watch it right. No, I would not allow my orphans to watch another hour explanation for this. Rather, I will compress the entire explanation for you in minutes so they don't have to watch this video. But if you want a more detailed explanation, I recommend you watch it in here instead. Anyway, this is how I got the conclusion to what I said. Let's do this quickly. Have you read the book The Princess and the Six Pygmies? Well, no you can't. The book is mostly unreleased. Except this one book from Lisa. Yes, that book that the Abyss Mage literally stole from Lisa. This is obviously an important book which basically says the entire past of the four Descenders, specifically the Night Mother, the Light Prince, and the Pale Princess, as well as the Six Pygmies, which is an allegory of the second Descender, third Descender, the Palasili, and yes, 6, not 7, Archons. This is very important. Anyway, my name for now links the same characters with the Gnostic hymn, which is the snake being the primordial one, the princess being the Night Mother, and this guy being the Prince of Light. And if the snake is the primordial one, and the snakes are already another form of dragons, don't forget I already explained the primordial one, how could it be a dragon as well because of Kevin, how can Khaenri'ah use the primordial one as a symbol of the Black Serpent Knights, a nation who recognizes no god? Unless all the Descenders are also symbolized as snakes and dragons. Dainslief's constellation is Ouroboros, and the Norse version is Jomungandr, I have no idea if I said it right, an usher of the end of the world, which fits with the new Descender arrival, new cycle, blah 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 we just talked about, making him the third Descender. With this info, with this element being dissectable to 7 elements, being called the Prince of Light, and us saying that every Descender is a god, king, and star, you get the picture. Now, if you don't believe, you can watch the videos because he can explain it better than I can. But if you do, let's move on.
Yuda was so silly he forgot to explain why Shesha was important with Dainslief. If you look at the Nagisynchroids old notes, it name drop Narayana along with the Descenders' capabilities if you remember. Shesha or Sesa is the mount of Vishnu, the god creator, protector and transformer. If Dain's element says Sesa in it, that means his element involves something with a Descender's will, right?
What if the marriage between the Tsaritsa and the Tsar was actually the marriage of the Traveler from Afar and the Seelie? What if that Seelie is the Tsaritsa? And after their marriage, the traveler from afar on the city was taken by the promoted one, stripped of their divinity, and then reincarnated to the earth, just like the Midnight Sun who have lost their divine sun, and only emanating the twilight. Like a dead man's legacy. You know what's the crazy kicker here too? Apollo was also known as Helios. Helios had a sister named Selene, who was the goddess of the moon. She so happens to have loved a serpent called Endymion. Did you know that Selene and Endymion married and got a child named Narcissus? Do you know anyone in Genshin related to Narcissus? That, with their weird correlation of a royal Seelie loving a traveler from afar, sounds like a crazy parallel. Could it be possible that this is a call out how Narcissenkreuz tried to be a descender like his uncle Apollo? With this in mind, what if the third descender died through the battle between the promoted one and became the mortal Dainslief? The current now Tsaritsa, now somehow affected and sad, and wants to revive the third descender by taking his parts, bringing him back as the true fourth descender and the fifth god king. What if this is the Fatui's plan all along? And in the end of the story, the Tsaritsa succeeds by reviving the third descender and the true Tsar. And you, as the traveler, have to go back and take the race to seize the throne to see who truly is the true fourth descender and the true and final fifth sun god. The true descender to see who will burn the old world and create the new world, the new cycle, the sixth cycle.
But Rosaline, I promise you, your final resting place will be the entirety of the old world.
What if Zhongli knows he can't do it? What if he's letting you see the truth like the Abyss sibling did, allowing us to learn about the truth of Teyvat? And just like Kungjun the Benevolent to save Liyue from Azhdaha's destruction, Zhongli the benevolent side of the Pamori ones descended to find you as a traveler to save Teyvat. Zhongli to task you to defeat the risen third descender to fight and destroy once more the third descender.
Your journey has reached its end, but one final doorway remains. Step forth if you have understood the meaning of your journey. Defeat me, command me to step aside. Show me that you are worthier than I to rescue her. Then, the threads of all fate will be yours to reweave.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, Timmies and tanks, is why Zhongli's identity spoiled the plot of Genshin Impact.